There is power behind every story we carry within. Every tragedy, no, yes, laugh, victory. And every testimony that is incubated within our souls have power. The power to transform, from tragedy to crown, from obstacle to opportunity. And all the moments in between make us wiser. Watch Candid Conversations with Charisa for impactful, unheard moments that will certainly spark your power and inner truth to shift, heal, and restore your life. It's time to get real, uncover, unlock, unpack, set free, and increase the dialogue to change a life. We all start somewhere and end in places of destiny. Get ready for the long-awaited Candid Conversations with Charisa.
Hi, it's Charissa Monroe Wilborn, and I want to welcome you back to Candid Conversations Season 4. Yes, we are rocking, we are rolling, and it is getting better and better and better. If you are here, you've either been following my channel on YouTube, you've been subscribing, and if you haven't, now you want to subscribe, now is the time. Make sure you share, make sure you like, and make sure you comment. I love reading your comments. They are so encouraging and so supportive. So keep following for the next the next 8 weeks. We'll be here just having open and candid conversations about life. Stay tuned. You know, I remember someone telling me that right before my mom passed, they said she had to speak at an event. And she talked about what her purpose was as a woman, as a female. And she said she believed that her purpose was exactly who she was, the wife of my dad. She believed that her purpose was to be his wife, to serve alongside him. And that lands on my modern day ears. But it also lands on a part of me that very much her offspring. And it's interesting that it literally takes a strong, humble woman to say that. You will not find a lot of women today, strong, weak, humble, boastful, prideful, saying anything about their purpose is to be and work and support alongside their husband or a man. And one of the things when I sit with that, like to me, that makes her even such a greater leader. Because it takes someone that knows that I have influence anyway. I have leader position anyway. I don't have to be in the front. I don't have to be big. I don't even have to be heard or seen. And I still can assist and support and lead with my husband. But for her to make a declaration, like she stood on a stage and said, my purpose was to be the wife of Miles Monroe. And that only wasn't a wife to cook and clean and wipe up after him. No, that was a wife who, you know, and I will make a help meet for you. Like she was that for him. She was his support. She was his peace when he came home. She was his peace when he traveled and she was home. She was the one who he could leave his kids with when he was at work. She knew that he can do his work. He can even live out his work because of who she was. But she knew this. And because she knew who she was, she knew her place. She knew, you know, I have all of this power anyway. I even have the authority. She said, my purpose was to be his wife, to support him alongside him. And I think about so many of us now as women, as mothers, as leaders. And I'm like, man, not only does it take a strong woman to know that, but then it takes a certain type of man to hear that and not use that as a stepping stool, or not use that as a way to degrade and diminish and devalue the value of his woman or the mother of my children. And I am certain that my dad knew exactly who my mom was as a person in her life. And I've watched my mom do a few things over the years. But I'm a strong believer that as you go through seasons, you uncover different parts and different levels of your purpose. And as a 60-year-old woman, that is what she is saying. And I've never heard her say that before. But she said, my purpose was to be the wife of Miles Monroe. Which means to me, there could be no other woman who would have been fitting for, not for Miles Monroe, but for who Miles Monroe was. For his position, for his leadership, for his status, for the call on his life, and then even for his children. Because he could have been exactly who he was with the wrong woman, with the wrong wife, who purpose was not to work. I'm not working alongside no man. He's not going to be ruling over me. No, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do my own. I can be a boss lady too. Everyone does it. But my mom knew that she can. And she knew that she was. But first, her purpose was, I was supposed to be the wife of Miles Monroe. I was supposed to not be seen, not be heard, and still be a leader. And there are so many leaders today that believes that leadership is position, leadership is status. So I have to be in the front, or I have to be the only one. I have to be loud. I have to be seen. I have to be heard. And if they know anything about my mom, that was not her. She was not going to be one that you was going to see. You wasn't going to hear her. You barely was going to feel her. But the minute you call upon her to do any of those things, she going to show up looking like, let me tell you something. The queen, when she opened her mouth, you going to know, what? Where all of this fiery been? But that's just who she was, because she understood. She didn't need it to be out there. And I talk so much about her now because a lot of people talk about my dad. A lot of people talk about even myself and my brother and what we're doing now that they're gone, but they don't understand the woman behind him. They don't understand, and if I am to correct myself, the woman on the side of him. The woman who knew her position, who was fine with her position, who knew that that was her purpose in line with his, like he knew what he had. And so I talk about her to the level of just honor and esteem, because I look at myself as a woman in leadership, both in value and in position, also being out in the front. And every time I think about her, I use my mom to humble me. I use her to always keep me, Charisa, but stay humble. Like that was the one thing that my parents taught my brother and I. No matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, no matter who you're talking to, no matter who your audience is, stay humble. And I think about her, stay humble, because she was a greater leader than I ever will be. But I get to stay humble in spite of the position that I'm in. Now that's an even greater question. You know, what does it really mean to be humble? Not even as a person, but as a leader, and then as a woman. And that you are correct. A lot of people think that humility does mean to be silent. You know, I'm just not going to say anything. And that's not the case. It's not a matter of being silent. It's just, actually, it's knowing when to say something. And I think humility, as I say that, humility and wisdom to me go together. Because humble is just, even if you have something to say, now may not be the time. This may not be the place. There's a season and a time and a place for everything. It may not be now. It may not be your place. You may have all the power, but no authority at this moment. And understanding that, allowing, and it's different in a marriage, because I watched my mom remain so humble to my dad, but that humility also came from her submission to him as not so much as a man, but just as the leader of the home, as the leader that she chose to put in her life. He didn't choose to be there. He asked a question. She said yes. He could have said no. She could have said, no, I don't want to marry you. But as soon as she said yes, that was her accepting and making the decision that I'm going to also make you the man of my home. the husband of the father of my children, the husband of my life, the king of my world. And once you do that, then there's a place that everybody else falls in. And that humility, because there are times when, depending on how you look at leadership, it it can become a very, kind of out there, spotlight, famous, all kind of money, all kind of followers, all the lights. You just have to always be smiling and you're always there. Like, some people look at leadership and influence and think that's what it is. But sometimes, to me, some of the greatest influences that I've had, or the experiences that I've even witnessed, so my parents have been in silence, have been in quiet, behind closed doors, just one or two people, changing the world, versus it being out there with so much pride and boast. And sometimes when I look at humility, it's also a character trait that it's one of those character muscles that you build over time. And if you're not careful, you'll abuse it. Or you'll just be weak in it. So you can get to the top, and if you're not humble, your very pride and your very boastfulness can drop you down back to the floor like that. It's one of those things where if you're not honing in and if you're not staying humble and you're not building, you'll grow in leadership, you'll grow in position, you'll grow influence, but you won't stay there. Because wisdom won't tell you, okay, now is the time to speak, or now isn't the time to speak. Now is the time to understand, you know what, as a woman, I have so much influence right now in a room full of men. They have no idea. I'm not going to say a thing. Versus joining the conversation, or versus making sure, well, all these men and no one is paying attention to me. No, they know you're there. You know you're there. When is your time and when you're ready, the minute you open your mouth, you want to get everybody listening. You don't want to have to make people listen. You understand what I'm saying? Imagine being able to say something at a volume that everyone is going to listen because what you're saying makes sense. Versus you have to say it at a volume that's loud and they can't listen because you're too loud. But not my mom. I watched my mom just be humble. And it wasn't that she was quiet. The woman just was wise. And she was humble and so when she did open her mouth, because she didn't open her mouth all the time, when she did, you wondered where in the world did all of this knowledge and information and influence come from? This is bottled up in there. We need you to talk more. And then you start getting people pulling from you. But they're looking at something a lot more. They're looking at the humility. They're looking at the wisdom. And so a lot of leaders, and I look at leaders a lot because everybody, professes to be one. Everybody, and everybody is. People are becoming. Leadership is one of those things that you either become, or you've been given some kind of authority to the power that you already have. But you always know, I can tell, they're going to make it to the top, but they're not going to stay there. They're not going to make it to the top because the humility that they need to stay there, the character that they need to stay there, is not present, or it's weak. And I'm going to use my mom. That's another very good question. Why is submission even important? In marriage, especially, in relationships, especially when you're dealing with the power of men and women. And I use my mom a lot because a lot of these concepts and principles I watched her live out in excellence as a woman, as a pastor's wife, as a woman who had her own purpose, as the wife of Miles Monroe, who was very famous, and she herself was also very, profound. And then as a mother of two children. And also as someone who was quiet as she was not a pushover. So I see all of this and I watch all of this and I'm like, man, how do you submit? Is this what submission looks like? And to watch submission look like, literally, where you go, I will follow. Like, I watched where my dad went, she followed. And it wasn't it's very hard to talk about submission from the woman without talking about the leadership from the husband. or the man. The two of them go hand in hand. And my mom was I watched her able to submit to the leadership of my dad because of who he was as a leader. And it wasn't you lead and I will follow you, meaning you're leading and I'm going to run catch you up, please wait. No, it was I'm going to lead you, let's go, take my hand. And she says, yes, I will follow. And then they went together. Like, that is a big difference than I'm running, don't leave me. How dare you leave me behind? I'm supposed to be up there with you. I'm coming type of submission. That's not it. I didn't see that. But submission is one of those things that a lot of people don't like because there is this false precept that submission means rulership. And it's not. There's this false precept that it means I'm above, it means superiority, and it doesn't. When I look at submission, the first word that comes to mind is protection, especially for the woman as a wife, as a mother, as and I'm going to use this word, as the meeker vessel or the weaker vessel of the two when it comes to man and woman. And you could imagine getting the protection, not only the physical protection, but the emotional protection, the financial protection, even the influential protection from a man who's willing to love and lead you and keep you from the demises of this world in spiritual, physical, mental, psychological, and submission has its place from woman to man to God. And that's why I say it's very difficult to talk about submission and not be able to talk about the leadership that's above it. And so again, I watched my mom able to submit to my dad, but then I watched my dad also have to submit to something. There was a purpose that he had to submit to. And if he was submitting to a purpose, that means he was also submitting to God. So if he didn't have a head, if he didn't have a covering, then my mom could have very well say, well, if you don't have a covering and God is not your covering and you want me to submit to you, I can't, because there's no one covering you. Who is protecting you? And so sometimes we talk about submission, but then what are we submitting to? Okay, so then who is the man that's there? And then sometimes I want to check on the man. What's his leadership? Where is he at? What's his position? What's his position in God? Who is he submitting to? Is he submitting to drugs? Is he submitting to fornication? Is he submitting to a totally different religion that's not mine? Like, he could be submitting to all kind of things that are not aligned with what my purpose is. So I get to make a conscious decision and say, okay, God, I cannot and will not submit to this man, but I will submit to you. But there has to be a submission to something because he has to submit to something. Like my husband. So I look at my husband and I relationship now, and I sometimes align it with what they had, and I can submit to my husband because I know that there's a chain of command of submission that he also is under, whether that's his pastor and then he's also submitting to God. So I know when things are rocky as far as he's concerned, I know what's missing. And I know where to go when I get to say to him, you know what, I can tell when we are not completely and solely and connected and submitted to God, because I can see it in the weakness of our marriage. We need to get back to that. I get to say that. And you know what my mind gets to say to me? He don't get to say, well, woman, what you talking about? No, he gets to say, you know what, you're right. Because once you start speaking in those terms and speaking their language, there's very little for them to say, but you know you're right. Now, they want to be the one to say it, but they also understand, she's only here to help me. And submission, because again, remember I said earlier, we have so much influence as a woman. We have so much influence as a woman. And Eve used it very well back in the creation when we fell. And submission is one of those things that keeps that influence under control. Or else as women, we'll just be dynamites. booming and booming and booming all over the place. And it's like, wait a minute, lady, let's get you under control. And so sometimes my husband even have to get me under control. And I have to be okay with, okay. I know sometimes he wouldn't just take my throat and be like, but he loves me so much, he won't ever do that. But he gets to say to me, no, I need you to calm down. I need you to, let's breathe. And he gets to bring me in or reel me in and say, you know what, I love you. What's going on? And I get to say, and then I get to say what it is. But submission does that. Submission, leadership, and love, like all of those things are important. Where there is no love, it's very difficult for a woman to submit to another man or to a husband. Same thing with the father-daughter. I get to submit to my dad because of the father that he was. I get to honor and respect him because of the father that he was. And then, of course, the Bible says, honor your father and your mother. So even if he was a deadbeat dad, I would have had to honor just the fact that he was my father. But I get to submit to another man that may have stepped in and say, you know what, I love you and I'm going to take care of you. I get to protect you. And I want to say to all of my beautiful mothers, young, old, happy, happy, happy Mother's Day. I hope that you are being loved and cherished and treasured and uplifted and elevated on this beautiful day. To those who are like me, whose mothers are no longer here, we still get to celebrate the memories that we have with them. We still get to celebrate the love that they've shared. We still get to celebrate who we are because of our mothers. I know I am celebrating my mom, and I'm going to celebrate her on this Mother's Day because I am half the woman I am because of her. So I want to wish all of those mothers who are not mothers yet, like myself, who are aspiring to be mothers, and I want you to know that you and we are going to be the best mothers going forward. God is going to give us gifts that He thought was just enough and special just for you and just for me. And to all of those fathers and sons who are going to be loving on their mothers, please remember that she is special. She is God's gift. We are the reason. We are the reason why you are here. And so we know our special. We know that we are unique. And I want to say happy Mother's Day on this special day for so many of you. You are loved and you are special. God bless.